You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at usaa.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caveat, N2K Cyberwire's privacy, surveillance, law, and policy podcast. I'm Dave Bittner, and joining me is my co-host Ben Yellen from the University of Maryland Center for Cyber Health and Hazard Strategies. Hey there, Ben.
Hello, Dave.
On today's show, Ben discusses the UK's controversial new Online Safety Act. I've got a look at automated license plate scanners expanding into schoolyards. While this show covers legal topics, and Ben is a lawyer, the views expressed do not constitute legal advice. For official legal advice on any of the topics we cover, please contact your attorney.
New adversary tactics and emerging tech to meet these threats is developing all the time. On Threat Vector, we keep you a step ahead. We dig deep into the threats that matter and the strategies that work.
How do they help that customer know that what they just created is safe?
The future is now, and our expectations are wrong.
Join me, David Moulton, Senior Director of Thought Leadership for Uni42 at Palo Alto Networks, and our guests who live this work every day.
We're not just talking about some encryption and paying multi-million-dollar ransom. We're talking about fundamentally being unable to operate.
Automated eradication and containment. So being able to very rapidly ID what's going on in an environment and contain that immediately.
They're hiding in plain sight.
So if you're looking to sharpen your strategy and stay ahead of what's next, tune in and listen to Threat Vector, your front line for security insights.
CISOs and CIOs know machine identities now outnumber humans by more than 80-1. And without securing them, trust, uptime, outages, and compliance are at risk. CyberArk is leading the way with the only unified platform purpose-built to secure every machine identity, certificates, secrets, and workloads across all environments, all clouds, and all AI agents. Designed for scale, automation, and quantum readiness, CyberArk helps modern enterprises secure their machine future. Visit cyberark.com/machines to see how. All right, Ben, we got a lot to cover this week. You want to kick things off for us?
Sure. So the world of cyber and data privacy and surveillance news always seems to follow me wherever I go. And I was on vacation, as you know, last week in the United Kingdom. And sure enough, our news story, our first story for this episode, comes from the United Kingdom. So they enacted a new Online Safety Act. It went into effect about a week ago. And this act mandates that any site accessible in the UK, doesn't have to be a UK website, just something you can visit while you're there, including social media, search engines, music, and things like adult content, have to enforce age checks to prevent children from seeing harmful content. So what counts as harmful content? The obvious stuff, pornographic content, anything that encourages suicide, self-harm, that sort of thing. I think those are things that all of us would agree we want to keep away from children. Then there's priority content that is harmful to children. So content that is abusive on the basis of race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, disability, or gender reassignment, anything that incites hatred against people on the basis of those protected characteristics, bullying content, which just seems very vague to me and kind of ripe for potential abuse.
See, there's half the internet.
Right. And I was just saying to you before we started recording that, I could be accused of bullying on various social media sites when I'm arguing with people.
Yeah.
And then there's this kind of catch-all third category of harmful content, which is any content that presents a material risk of significant harm to an appreciable number of children in the UK. as long as that harm doesn't flow from the potential financial impact, the safety or quality of goods featured in the content, or the way in which a service featured in the content may be performed.
Okay.
So this has become very controversial. The UK doesn't have the type of robust constitutional free speech protections that we have. I think this law, if it were enacted in the United States, would be thrown out on First Amendment grounds. Any potential restrictions on speech that are permissible have to further a compelling governmental interest and would have to be the narrowest means of achieving that interest. And when you talk about regulating content or blocking access to content based on vague concepts like bullying and even hate speech, obviously none of us like hate speech, but in the U.S., that is constitutionally protected speech. So there's been a bit of an outcry to this. A lot of the social media sites and their founders and owners have written letters and have signed petitions saying that the UK Online Safety Act is overly restrictive. It's forcing people oftentimes to upload identification and send that identification to third-party vendors in order to view content. And there are provisions in the law that allow for the UK government to restrict content entirely. So a lot of internet sleuths have been logging onto VPNs,
right,
putting themselves in the United Kingdom and kind of testing out how the law works. And so they've posted content on the Israel-Gaza war. Some of that's ended up being blocked, depending on what images are being used. And other types of what we would consider to be free speech have been blocked. The way around this for people in the UK is the use of VPNs to put themselves in other countries. And one of the things that we've seen, and you probably could have guessed it, is the most downloaded applications over the last week in the UK have been VPN platforms.
Right.
Which is really interesting. I think this is just another example of something that's very well-intentioned, preventing children from accessing harmful content that ends up really frustrating users and causes a really big backlash. And even though right now this is centered on the UK, it has an impact on us in a number of ways.
Do you have any sense for how much the enforcement of these rules is proactive versus reactive? And you see where I'm going with that?
Right. Like if they are trying to...
Are they responding to reports that, like reactive would be, I post something with hate speech, you report it, and the platform takes it down.
Right.
Proactive would be the platform is actively scanning for hate speech without anyone else's intervention.
I think at least the way the law is written is it allows for both. But I think there has been, based on the reporting I've seen, there has been some proactive enforcement that's not just reactive. I also don't think that distinction ends up meaning a whole lot because eventually things that are borderline are going to get reported, and it's up to the UK governance bodies, whatever the relevant secretary is, to enforce it. But I do think they are doing a certain level of proactive enforcement here to make sure that the law is being followed as it's intended.
So what if you're Facebook? Like, because I just think about how often Facebook ignores people's, or not even ignores, disallows people's reports of all kinds of, unattractive speech, let's call it.
Right.
Right? And so does this mean that an organization like Facebook is going to err more on the side of, when in doubt, throw it out, that sort of thing?
That's the concern, is that even though maybe under a technical interpretation of the law, a specific type of content would be allowable, it's the threat of government action that's going to have a chilling effect on these social media websites operating overseas. So the punishments under this law are very severe. It would be fines of up to 10% of global revenue, which is a lot. When we're talking about Facebook, that's probably like half the budget of the United Kingdom. Not seriously, but it's a large amount of money.
Right.
That's one of the punishments. And then their other kind of prophylactic measure would be to take down content on websites entirely, which feels less like something that a Western democracy would do. Again, I'm sympathetic because I understand the need to protect children from harmful content. And the methods that we currently use here in the United States aren't always effective. I will say, this comes in the wake of our Supreme Court holding just last month that Texas's age verification procedures are constitutional, that they are narrowly targeted enough to protect against minors accessing certain websites. But the category of websites in that case was much narrower. I think what makes the UK law something that the tech community is up in arms about is just how broad potential restrictions are when we talk about things like hate speech and bullying. So I think that's where people are taking the most offense.
Are people taking their legal avenues to try to fight this?
So far, we haven't seen any direct lawsuits. We've seen threats for lawsuits in the English or the UK legal system. So that's something that is certainly coming down the pike. As somebody who's not an expert in the UK legal system, although I can sometimes play one on the podcast, it's just hard to prognosticate how those cases will go just because they don't have that same type of robust First Amendment law.
Yeah.
But I think so far the companies have kind of done everything beyond filing lawsuits. So they've written, they've complained. There's a petition that's gone around that has 350,000 signatures that was produced by leaders from websites like Gab, which is a known conservative right-wing site in the United States. And kind of a key opposition figure in the UK, Nigel Farage, who people probably remember from the Brexit stuff. And he's now the leader of a ascendant party in the UK called the Reform Party, has promised to repeal this law if he ever gets into power. So it's become kind of a forum of political controversy as well.
Do we end up with a group of haves and have-nots of basically this isn't that bad for anyone who can afford a VPN?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is. And VPNs, for most people, are decently affordable. You pay a monthly fee that's not exorbitant in the slightest. It also kind of, the fact that VPNs exist and there's not really any effort that I can see in the UK to restrict the use of VPNs means that there's just an easy workaround around this law. But that's just the natural result of not having global governance structures, where if you don't like the way one country is enforcing its laws and restricting speech, then VPNs are always an option. You can just put yourself in another country. And until we probably won't anytime in the near future, but until we have global governance of these types of issues or some type of international agreements, I think we're going to see exactly what we're seeing right now. It's not just the UK where this has happened. When Florida earlier this year implemented a new law restricting access to online pornography, there was a huge spike in searches for VPNs there. And people were just situating themselves in other states. So, yeah, I mean, the VPN element of this is fascinating to me because it's just such an easy workaround. But yeah, it does create a potential haves and have-nots problem. I don't think VPNs are prohibitively expensive for people who are regular users of the internet, but it's certainly an added cost, which is something we never want to do in the spirit of free speech. We want equitable access to these platforms.
Yeah. Have there been any of the major players threatening to pull out of the UK market?
Yeah, so Gab was one that explicitly threatened to pull out of the agreement. I think there have been a couple of other sites or other platforms that have said that at least as this law is being enforced right now, it might not be practical for us to continue operating in the United Kingdom. So Gab is really the one example where they've explicitly threatened it so far. But I think the other companies have kind of implied it in their letters that they're implementing age checks to block children from seeing harmful content. But if we get into a situation where they are over-enforcing this law and taking down content that is not actually offensive, then the lever that these companies might pull is to take away their services in the UK.
Yeah.
Again, that's a problem a VPN also solves for you, but you are cutting yourself off from a pretty significant market if you take yourself out of the UK. So it's certainly a risk for the companies.
Well, and one person's bullying is another person's spirited debate, right? Like, you said yourself, you've been involved in some online exchanges that could probably be categorized as bullying, but I imagine in the heat of it, you wouldn't have categorized it as that.
Yeah, and not to get all philosophical, but I just think one of the, a key essence of the right to free speech is to have provocative and sometimes offensive content. Now, this is a law about restricting access to that content by children, but one of the things that Texas case talked about, and always the concern, is that if you have these burdensome verification procedures that end up blocking a significant amount of content, that doesn't only affect children, it affects adults as well. And so that blocks access to a potential marketplace of ideas. And there's just a kind of checkered history of restricting content on any platform because it's offensive to certain people. I mean,
right.
I think that's a slippery slope that those of us in the United States can appreciate. So again, certainly probably most of the intended content that's being targeted under this law consists of things that I personally would find offensive.
Right.
I do think it's more the spirit of free speech and the First Amendment in the United States that's being violated here.
It seems to me like it also gives people a nuclear option. In other words, you and I are having a spirited online debate, and we both agree that we're having a spirited online debate. And then suddenly I feel like I'm losing the debate, and I'm bent out of shape about that. And so I report the debate to Facebook or whoever's hosting it and say, I'm being bullied.
And then there's
kaboom,
there's
it's gone.
some trigger word on there that
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I would hate to see a situation like that, especially because when you understand the intention of this law, I don't think UK policymakers are wishing to use the full force of the government to stop contentious political conversations on these platforms, but that incidentally may be what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's incumbent upon the UK, if the backlash to this law gets even more severe, and to other countries that are looking into this type of age verification or content moderation, to try and figure out less restrictive alternatives that don't require age verification through third-party applications, that sort of thing, that are instead focused on having the companies adjust algorithms or just less restrictive means that would keep children from viewing the most offensive content but wouldn't prevent adults from accessing offensive content on these platforms.
To what degree do you think U.S. lawmakers are keeping a close eye on this?
It's funny. So the president of the United States was in Scotland, and he met with the British prime minister, and he got a question about this law. Basically, his only frame of reference was well, they're not taking down Truth Social, so I'm fine with it. It's not a big deal. Besides the president himself,
right.
You have to think that U.S. policymakers are paying attention here, both to the law itself and to the backlash. When you see petitions being signed, when you see outcries from these U.S.-based platforms, I think you can see the political peril in trying to institute these regulations. And if you go beyond what Florida and Texas did, which is just instituting age verification measures for pornography and not anything else, I think that's one thing. But this is a signal that if you start to veer beyond that and have the government and not the platforms themselves coming up with hate speech policies, that you're going to see the type of backlash that the UK is seeing right now. So I think this is something that U.S. policymakers have to pay attention to.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will have a link to that story in the show notes. And now, a word from our sponsor, ThreatLocker, the powerful zero-trust enterprise solution that stops ransomware in its tracks. Allow Listing is a deny-by-default software that makes application control simple and fast. Ring fencing is an application containment strategy, ensuring apps can only access the files, registry keys, network resources, and other applications they truly need to function. Shut out cybercriminals with world-class endpoint protection from ThreatLocker. My story this week comes from the folks over at The Record, and this has to do with license plate readers, which is a shiny object for us.
Yeah,
right?
one of our favorite topics.
We cannot resist a good license plate reader story. Let me ask you this, Ben, before we dig into the story. Have you noticed the proliferation of the flock license plate readers around town?
Are those the ones that have caught me speeding on the interstate?
No. I guess, would you know one if you saw one?
I don't think I would.
Okay. So they are conspicuous in that it's a very simple installation. And it's all in black. So you have the black pole that comes out of the ground. You have a little camera that looks kind of like a Ring doorbell camera. And then a solar panel at the very top. And that's all there is. So the way that they work is, obviously, they get their power from the solar panel. There's a built-in battery, so it can work when the sun goes down. But then it has a cellular connection, and it's just keeping track of vehicles that are coming by and sending them to Flock's mothership for processing and all that kind of stuff. But I have seen them, once you know what to look for, I see them popping up all over the place.
All right, well, when I drive out of here today, I will be having my eyes set on Flock safety cameras.
Yeah. So Flock is looking to expand their presence into schools, school parking lots in particular, the pickup and drop-off loop, right? And so they're partnering with a company called Raptor Technologies, who is a company that focuses on safety in schools. And it looks like their first foray here is into what they're calling dismissal management systems. So, at the end of the school day when the bell rings and all the kids run out to get on their school buses.
Right.
And these days, many, many kids are being picked up by their parents to be driven home because, our precious little snowflakes cannot walk.
Or take the school bus, yeah. Or we live too close to the elementary school to qualify for the school bus.
Yes.
That's true for some of us.
But that's my point, is that if you are in walking distance, and I'm using air quotes, chances are you're getting a ride because, again, precious little snowflakes. Have I mentioned, Ben, that I used to walk to school uphill both ways in the snow?
Both ways, barefoot in the snow?
Yes, absolutely. So what they're talking about are security methods for the schools. So because Flock system, not only does it read license plates, it can recognize the make and model of a car. So let's say you drive into the school parking lot, it'll read your license plate number, but in your case, it would also recognize that you're driving a late model Rolls-Royce and keep track of all that. What they're talking about here is matching students to vehicles. So little Johnny comes out of the school and it's keeping track through the combination of Flock's technology and Raptor's technology. So I'm assuming there's some facial recognition stuff going on here.
There would have to be if it's a vehicle is not involved in one way or another. Because if you're monitoring bus stops and walking routes, then any ALPR is not going to be sufficient.
Well, I think what they're talking about here is particularly or specifically for the kids who are getting a ride home in a car.
Right.
So it could tell if, a kid's getting into the car that the kid always gets into.
Right.
But more importantly, it can tell if the kid gets into a car that it hasn't seen before, that it doesn't recognize, and it could put a red flag on that.
Right.
What's your initial response to that possibility?
Well, there are a couple of potential concerns. One is for the privacy rights of students and families. And in the absence of any type of opt-out provision, just by sending your kid to school, you're subjecting them to a mass surveillance system. The claim, at least in this article, is that the company has a database of over 1 billion license plates. And once you have a license plate, if you were to have a law enforcement agency, and I think several thousand of them use this technology, that wants to do an investigation, it becomes much easier now that you're part of that database. So that's certainly one concern I have. From a legal constitutional perspective, I mean, the rights that you have as a public school student are diminished in a sense in the United States for the purpose of protecting everybody else's safety and not interrupting school procedures while kids are in school, or safe pickup and drop off. So it's not like if this were instituted outside of a private business or even at some type of adult workplace, I think it would present different issues. But because we are dealing with school children, I think there is a significant interest on behalf of school systems in ensuring safe pickups and drop-offs. So I'm sympathetic to it.
Yeah.
I would just worry about potential invasion of privacy and what this might do to vulnerable students who, you can think of situations where there's some type of domestic violence situation and they're not going home with one of the parents. They have a safe extended relative who's picking them up instead.
Mm-hmm.
That information gets relayed to a principal when that student and that student's caretaker wouldn't want that information revealed to a principal, or situations with divorced parents. Like, you could see it becoming an issue there. But I also, as a parent myself, like, if there were some system to ensure that my kids always got home safely and that I could track them and make sure that they were getting in the right vehicle, my parent sense, I think, is different than my privacy advocate sense on this one.
Yeah. The folks at Flock Safety have put up a blog post with they list 5 ways that this will help school campus safety. So why don't we run through them together and see if we agree with them. The first one is, they say, streamlining dismissal with automated vehicle matching. So that's pretty much what we were just talking about, that they're going to match license plates to who is authorized to pick up a child.
Little Johnny got in the right car.
Yeah, and I don't have any immediate problems with that. They're talking about preventing unauthorized access to campus. So someone drives on to the school campus who's known to be a troublemaker, is already in some database, right?
Yeah, I'm cool with that one, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we do that, like, people in Home Depot who've been caught stealing and have some type of trespass action against them, like, their facial recognition tools that Home Depot uses, that they can kick you out of the store. If we're going to use it there, I'm fine using it at school systems.
Yeah. They say for supporting emergency response and investigations. So they're saying, like, in a crisis situation, if you had a missing student or a security threat, that, again, them being able to access their vast network of data would help law enforcement establish what's going on more quickly. I think that's plausible.
Reasonable.
Yeah. They're talking about deploying scalable safety infrastructure fast. This is just basically them saying that these are easy to install and they're inexpensive. And, instead of paying for infrastructure and trenching and cabling, you just pay us a low monthly fee.
Right, exactly. Or, each school has one safety officer. We were considering putting 2 in there, but instead of doing that, we're going to give you this, automated license plate reader system, this Flock system.
Right. And then their 5th is creating safer school zones beyond campus. So they're talking about having these zones of, they call them corridors, or safe corridors for student travel. Again, the ubiquitous surveillance blanket.
It gets a little more suspicious to me when it's not directly on school grounds, because people could be engaged in a lot of private First Amendment protected activity within close proximity to school districts that they just don't want those who control the databases to know about.
Right.
If there's a familial association or religious association or a political association that's discoverable through one of these networks, I think that would be problematic.
Yeah. So I guess we are cool with 3 out of the 5. I'd say 1 out of the 5 is really just kind of marketing. And maybe that 5th one of the being wrapped up in the warm embrace of surveillance is the one that makes our eyebrows lift up, right?
Yeah. I would also love to see at some point like some actual empirical research literature on this. Like in the aggregate, is this making schools safer or not? Oftentimes I'm surprised when I see studies on various safety methods where it's like, this is something that we've been doing for a long time. And the literature says that it actually doesn't have a major impact on keeping schools safe.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, at some point when this has been instituted and they start to do like double-blind studies with schools that have flock systems and schools that don't and comparing safety records, that would be really interesting to me. But we're not there yet.
Yeah. I also wonder, like, given the moment that we're in right now, what sort of restrictions a community would want to put on the sharing of this information. And I'm specifically thinking about, it's one thing to share with local law enforcement, but it's another thing to share with ICE.
Right.
Right?
Or, and this is the high-profile elephant in the room, Texas authorities reportedly performed a nationwide search combing through 83,000 flock cameras to track down a woman who they claimed had self-administered an abortion, which is illegal in Texas.
Right.
And that search had reportedly included a probe of footage collected in states where abortion is legal. It's like, okay, that, starts to raise some eyebrows. However cool this technology is when it's being applied in that setting to do that type of surveillance, no matter what your views are on abortion, it certainly is threatening to a person's privacy. If they're searching through 83,000 flock cameras to find an image of your license plate, I think that could also potentially have the type of chilling effect that we've talked about. If you know that wherever you're going to be caught by a flock camera, and there might be some search where they're trying to locate where you've been, a history of your last known location or whatever, that could prevent you from engaging in activities that other people might find distasteful or offensive. And you never want to see that.
Yeah, to just be able to track your associations.
Right. And I got to invoke Carpenter here. One thing that Carpenter said is having, and they didn't lay out specific parameters, but historical cell site location data where you're painting a picture of where somebody was over an extended period of time, that should require a warrant. Because that is a search that is broad, it's deep, and it's involuntary. Would all of those things not apply in this situation as well? People are not opting in to being caught by these flock cameras because they're so ubiquitous. That lends credence to the breadth of the search, and I think you could certainly see some parallels there.
Yeah, that's interesting. Drop the kid off down the street and let him walk the last quarter mile.
Yeah, now
right?
You're just going to seem suspicious, though. Then the flock people are going to be on you even more. They're going to be like, what is this person trying to hide?
Yeah. I have to say, like, what, the subversive side of me, when I started noticing these flock cameras, what they look like, and I started seeing them around town, unlike, some of the, let's say, like red light cameras and things like that that are built very robustly, I think because they know there are people out there who would be adversarial to them.
Yep.
You could take out one of these flock cameras with a baseball bat.
Oh, you totally could. Yeah. They look pretty flimsy.
Yeah. I mean, just backing into one of the poles would have it, looking at the sky.
Now, we are not encouraging anybody to engage in any illegal...
No, but if civil disobedience is your thing... so funny.
If you want to be subversive without doing anything illegal, you can also just, flip at the bird or something.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Or get yourself a spicy
vanity license plate. That's what you really need to do. Yeah.
Right. Now, you always see the folks on the cybersecurity side, trying to come up with some sort of a 0-day vulnerability for these cameras, where if they view the wrong thing and then try to use optical character reading to convert it, is there some way you could get them to crash remotely?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So. All right. Well, again, we'll have a link to this story in the show notes. Very interesting. It'll be. This is one that's going to be interesting to track as these cameras become more ubiquitous, because they're already ubiquitous.
They sure are.
What comes out of them? What good or bad? Because if we can rescue a kid who's been abducted, good news.
Absolutely.
But if, like we've just outlined, there could be lots of potential problematic uses of this as well. So it'd be interesting to see where we come out on that, on balance, and how our communities respond to that. So we'll have a link to that story in the show notes. And of course, we would love to hear from you. If there's something you'd like us to consider for the show, you can email us. It's caveat@n2k.com.
Shh. Hear that? Big waves are calling. Dive into refreshment with Kona Big Wave. Tropical flavor and the taste of aloha in every drop. This summer, don't just listen. Join Kona on the Big Wave Bonfire Tour. More information at konabigwave.com/bigwavemusic. Kona Big Wave. Liquid aloha. Copyright 2025 Kona Brewing Co., St. Louis, Missouri. Mahalo for enjoying responsibly.
And that's Caveat, brought to you by N2K Cyberwire. We would love to hear from you. We're conducting our annual audience survey to learn more about our listeners. We're collecting your insights through the end of this summer. There's a link in the show notes. Please take a moment and check it out. This episode is produced by Liz Stokes. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. The show is mixed by Trey Hester. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. I'm Dave Bittner.
And I'm Ben Yellen.
Thanks for listening.